Welcome here physically in Eindhoven and online to the event Motion Prompting. We sit behind our computers holding our phones. I'm doing it now also to interact with generating AI like ChatGPT, Midjourney. But what other bodily forms of sensing can emerge from our interaction with these tools? That's something we're going to explore tonight. My name is Liam Stolk. I'm director of the HUM, a platform for internet cultures. We explore and celebrate what people do online. From new phenomena to words that appear online. And besides that, we also look with a critical eye how that's impacted by technology. And we organize events, develop event formats, publish online research dossiers, have educational programs, and since recently also make exhibitions. We're actually currently located in the first exhibition that we made in Eindhoven at MU and in collaboration with MU Hybrid Art House and a gallery space in the Netherlands. And the exhibition is called The Poetics of Prompting. It's about the language that we use to communicate with the machine now. Because now if we want to communicate with a machine, usually that is done by filling in like a text prompt. And the prompt is the most easy way to communicate with the machine. And they're all, please have a seat. There are more physical people joining. Please feel free to find a place here. Prompting, and there are all kinds of prompt engineering courses that arrived. But what does it mean to be a prompt engineer? What is a good approach? Do we need to adopt the language of the machine, or do we put some poetry in the machine to get a bit of more interesting results? Because we also know like AI tools are a bit of a copy machine, and it's a bit of a challenge also to get something interesting out of it. And in this exhibition we have 21 artists who explore and experiment with collaborating with these models. We have, for instance, Sebastian Schmiek, who's also the inventor of the prompt battle format. The prompt battle is a competition of who is the best in generating images. And there's a training station here where you can learn your strategy. What's the best way to prompt. We also have, for instance, Eric Salvaccio, and he is interesting, like these AI tools are made to serve as the perfect image. How is it possible to get some noise in the images to get a less perfect result? And he's trying to get that out of the machine. There are a lot of examples. The physical audience can have a little tour or walk around here in the very short break that we have in the full program tonight. And the online audience can, of course, visit the website. A little less exciting. I already said there's a full program tonight, 1.5 hours and 5 speakers, I think. So it's a lot. And we have 2 artists that are exploring the motion prompting. And with motion prompting, it's a term actually Rodolfo and Vliet came up with. It's a bit of the opposite of text prompting, where you insert text to talk with the machine. Motion prompting is talking to the machine by bodily movements. We have 2 artists that did a project in the past half year exploring this. We have a technician who helped one of the artists, and we have a researcher who did a research to like the bias in motion prompting, and she discovered something very interesting, which you will hear later. And we don't have Q&A time right after each presentation, but you can leave your question already in the chat, because my colleague Margarita is collecting the questions, and we do have a bit of discussion time at the end of the event. So then we can ask all the questions. So don't hesitate to just leave it in the chat. I think that's the practical side, and it's time to invite the first speaker, but also the collaborator, because we make this event in collaboration with In4Art. And the next speaker can tell all about it, because that's the co-founder of In4Art, Rodolfo Groenewoud van Vliet. Please have an applause and a warm welcome for him.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. And so nice to finally have this event and to be able to kick off this evening. What I will do in the next more or less 50 minutes is give a very simple, hopefully simple, or at least practical introduction to the world of AI and to the world of prompting and motion prompting. And that is just to make sure that everybody here physically, but also online, is sort of at the same level of basic knowledge, because we probably have all kinds of levels of knowledgeability about AI with us, so that we can understand the presentations that come afterwards by the artists and the researchers, hopefully a bit better. So that's what I will do. My name, as said, introduced by Lilian, is Rodolfo, and I am part of In4Art. And In4Art is a European Institute for Art-Driven Innovation, Research and Production. That means that all of our projects, they are focusing on research questions, on innovation questions, and in that we seek to collaborate between companies, research institutes, and most importantly, artists. And two of those artists are with us tonight and will give a presentation after this. And they will present the projects they did as part of the S+T+ARTS AIR program that you see here in the back as well. S+T+ARTS AIR is a European program that is funded by the European Commission, that has a couple of partners, and these artists worked as 2 out of 10 partners with 2 out of 10 artists with a couple of these partners to realize the projects that you're gonna be introduced to in just a minute. But first, before we do that, let's start with what is AI in the first place? What is artificial intelligence? And to kick that off, I thought it may be good to go a bit back in history, because the first system that is commonly referred to as the first AI system actually stems from 1955. So AI is not as novel as many people say, or as many people propose it to be, because already in 1955 a group of scientists huddled around a computer the size of a room, and this is an image of how the computer could have looked like. A real image I couldn't find, actually, not with large enough pixels to present it anyhow. And they created a program called the Logic Theorist. And the Logic Theorist is considered by many to be the first true AI, because this machine was designed to mimic the problem-solving skills of a human. It could prove mathematical theorems, and not by crunching the numbers, but by reasoning symbolically, much like a human would reason. And in some cases, it actually turned out it found new or more elegant proofs than those originally published. Now, by now, what are we, 70 years later, we look back at this as maybe being the birth of what we now call AI. After that, we had quite an AI winter, and it took until the 1980s before new kinds of systems emerged. Like this one, the Mykin system, which was a medical AI, the first medical AI, that could actually diagnose blood infections and recommend treatments. And imagine a doctor consulting a computer for the first time to have a second opinion. In this case, the computer was more often right than wrong. It could even explain its reasoning, and that was the first time in history that a computer could not only reason, but explain to its human collaborator its reasoning. Now, these early AIs, they are often seen as savants, brilliant, but in a very, very narrow domain. Utterly lost outside of their specialisms. And they are a far cry from the flexible or more general intelligence that we humans possess. But in the last couple of years, that has taken quite a flight. Because today, AI has become ubiquitous. Often, without us even realizing it, we are already engaging with AI on a very regular basis. When Netflix recommends a show to us, that's AI. When we unlock our phone by our facial recognition, that is AI. When we ask a chatbot of our flight agency to answer our questions, that is more often than not by now AI. And technically speaking, modern AI systems are actually incredibly diverse. We talk about AI, but we actually talk about, by now, a whole range of species of different types of systems that are together called AI. Like with animals. We call them all animals, but the differences between cats and dogs or fish and birds are of course enormous. Let's take a little closer look, and for that I created this little graph, and I hope it makes a bit of sense to you. And let's go through it together a little bit, because when you go to the top left, you see the first species of AI. An AI that can generate human-like texts, engage in human-like conversations, and even write codes. And you may recognize this because more people every day are engaging with these kind of AIs called LLMs, like ChatGPT or Claude. We're using them more and more often. Then one down, AI can also understand and interpret visual information quite well nowadays. Recognize objects, recognize faces in images and videos through computer vision models. And some of you may know those as well, as Midjourney is an example of one of these models. A third species in the web, again down on the bottom left, are AIs that are multimodal models, or models that can actually combine multiple types of data. Models that can turn text into video, or the other way around. They are sort of hybrids, like mules, half horses, half donkeys, combining the powers of other species into a new category. You may have heard of GPT-4o, which is one of these models that has recently been released, only in June in fact, because they are very, very novel. Then, to the top right, there's a category of models that can learn through interacting with their environment. They train by observing and through trial and error. You may know them as AlphaGo, the system that beat the best global Go player a couple of years ago. Given a set of very strict rules, hence it's so perfect to play games, these models can become much better than humans could ever become in a matter of days or even hours in some cases. And outside of those highly complex games, like for instance Go, these models like AlphaGo currently know absolutely nothing and couldn't distinguish an apple from a banana. The next branch of AI species are able to generate realistic synthetic data. We call them GANs, or generative adversarial networks. Synthetic data is new data, but fake data, like faces that never existed, or photos that were never taken, or music that was never composed. Often when we hear stories in the news about deepfakes, that's the work of these little buggers. And then finally, and deliberately last in this family, because that's actually the category of AI that is the topic of tonight, we reached autoencoder models. Before we dive into them, it's good to stand still and not forget what is happening with AI today. Because I truly believe that these new species offer unbelievable new skills and possibilities. But it's not for nothing. It also comes at cost. AI systems, and in particular these large language models that we are creating, are extremely energy-hungry beasts. And training one model can reach up to the power required by 200 households in a complete year. And not forget about the water. The physical infrastructure that is required. The AI data centers, they use millions of liters of water almost on a daily basis to be operational. Economically, AI is also becoming a powerhouse. It's projected to add trillions to the global economy in the coming years. And when we look at the valuations of these companies behind it, like OpenAI, they're no longer talking about unicorns with valuations of 1 billion, but hectocorns. This was actually the first time I heard of this term, with a valuation of more than 100 billion euros, which is completely absurd. And it also costs a lot, because in 2022, when ChatGPT was released, models typically cost around 10 million euros to train. And that's purely energy and hardware costs. But that's rapidly increasing. Today's biggest model costs 100 million to train. And it's expected that within months and years, that will go beyond 1 billion euros to train one single model. That means it costs a lot of money, physical money, and the playing field of entities that are capable of training these models will become smaller and smaller. It also brings a lot of social challenges working with AI. There are concerns about job displacements, of course, privacy issues, but also hidden slavery when we talk about labeling, and the potential for AI to perpetuate or even amplify a lot of biases. And in this exhibition, you can also partially visit online, I understood, you will see quite a lot of artists also reflecting on many of those topics. Considering all these extremely fast developments, both in opportunities and threats, strengths and weaknesses, it is important that as many people as possible learn to understand and be able to relate to these kind of systems. Because only then can we have a voice, can we be an active participant in co-designing and co-steering where these systems are going and how they will become part of our daily lives, which they are already becoming. And that is why it is essential that now not as many diverse people as possible start to explore and interact with these technologies. Not only technical people, not only scientific people, but definitely also artists. And that is what art-driven innovation stands for. So maybe that was a very long introduction to explain what we are here to do. Now, let's go to the topic of tonight. Autoencoders, because I haven't introduced you to what that category of models actually is. Imagine you're playing a game with a friend and you're looking at a very detailed picture, and what you have to do is describe that detailed picture to your friend who is incapable or unable to see it. You describe what you see on that picture, and your friend has to redraw a picture based on your description and try to make it as realistic or as closely related to the original as possible. That's essentially what an autoencoder does. It takes complex input data, can be any type of data, and you'll see different types of data pass by tonight, encodes it with into a compact representation, and then all by itself tries to decode it again into its original input, or a combinational input based on many outputs based on many inputs. And in that process, it learns completely by itself to capture the most important features of that data. It doesn't need labeling, it doesn't need people to tell it what it should look for, it tries to do it by itself. And what makes autoencoders special is their ability to find patterns and structure in data without being explicitly told what to look for. This makes them versatile, and we will see some of these examples after this. Autoencoding. Then, the second part of tonight, of course, is prompting or motion prompting. Now that we understand a bit more about AI and the very diverse field of AI, let's talk about that. Because if AI is the engine, then prompting is like the steering wheel, right? Imagine that you have a super smart assistant, some of us are already using one on a daily basis, that can do almost anything, but takes instructions very, very literally. That is what our current AI systems do. Prompting isn't just about being specific though, it's also about understanding how the AI thinks and framing your request in a way that plays to their strength, to the model's strength. It's a skill that's becoming increasingly valuable as AI systems become even more powerful. And that's text-based prompting. What we're going to talk about, oh, wrong one again, motion prompting. An exciting frontier, I believe, at least. Because if regular prompting is like speaking to an eye, motion prompting is like dancing to one. And this is actually a quote by an AI, so I had no idea how to do justice to its source, and this is my attempt. So if anyone has a better idea how to refer to quotes generated by AI, maybe that's something to discuss. Motion prompting is about using your movement and your gestures to communicate with AI systems. Instead of typing commands or speaking to it, we use our body language. And this may sound futuristic, but you've probably already done it. For instance, if you've ever interacted with Wii, Nintendo Wii, you've basically motion prompted the game, right? Very simple form, but still. How it works? Very simply. You need sensors or cameras to capture movement, You need an AI that analyzes these movements in real time, and an AI to interpret these movements or as commands of information. Now, that's super complex, and the speakers of tonight will take you through how they do it in practice. But here's where it really gets interesting. Because remember those autoencoders we talked about? Today's projects actually use a special type of autoencoder to create what's called latent space representations of movement. And I don't know if any of you have heard of that term before, but you will after this session. Think of latent space representations like this. Instead of memorizing every possible movement, the AI sort of learns the alphabet of movements. Just like how you can create any word using just 26 letters, the AI finds a way to understand any possible movement by combining these basic motion letters that it generates itself out of the data set. Such an approach has actually a couple of advantages because it's extremely efficient. It allows for very fast processing and very secure and direct response times, generalizing a better understanding of new movements and having the possibility to generate complete new movements that never actually occurred. But why is motion prompting so potentially powerful? And that comes down to the unique quality of using body language, because up to 65% of human communication is non-verbal. Right? Our gestures, our postures and movements often convey more and sooner than our words do. They are more genuine, they're faster, and they're actually more telling. A quick gesture can convey an idea that might take a sentence to explain. The potential applications of motion prompting, are vast and sometimes also very exciting. You already see it coming back, for instance, in healthcare. Because the better you analyze movements, the better you can predict potential injuries or starting illnesses. But also people that have difficulties with speech or typing can use this to learn to use the systems that we otherwise would speak to or generate text for. But also in virtual reality, they have very high hopes of this, to get a much more natural understanding and interaction between the virtual world and the natural world. And where you possibly see the most advancement now is in sports training, capturing movements to identify very, very subtle changes that sports athletes can apply to improve their performance. And if we look even further, the amount of possibilities are endless, but also possibly very impactful and intrusive in our lives. Imagine clothes with built-in sensors that can monitor your health and mood based on your movement, or smart cities that aim to predict and prevent accidents by capturing the movements of people on the streets. To conclude the introduction of tonight, AI has come a long way from its early days of proving mathematical theorems. And today, with technologies like motion prompting, we're basically entering a new era not just of interacting with AI systems, but in interacting with them as humans, human-computer interaction. An era where our devices understand not just our words, but also our movements, our gestures, and our very body languages. And this technology has the potential to make our interactions more natural, more intuitive, and more human. It could break down barriers for people with disabilities, it could revolutionize how we train and perform in sports, and help us to understand and express ourselves better. But, as with any powerful technology, there's a but, it comes with a lot of responsibilities. And we should be mindful, for instance, about the energy and the resources we allocate to these systems. It doesn't come for nothing. And we should be vigilant about issues of privacy and consent, and not use whatever we can get our hands on. As our systems become better at understanding human movement, they ought to be used to empower and enable, and not surveil or control. The future of this, the future of AI and the future of motion prompting is not set in stone. And it's still to be shaped, it's very early days, by the choices we make, the questions we ask, and the values we uphold. And that is why I'm so proud to introduce to you in the coming hour how artists and researchers alike are trying to do just this. Try to relate it and build it as we go along. So with that, I conclude my introduction. Thank you for listening, all of you. I hope it was enlightening, and it was welcome to understand a bit better what we're going to talk about today. And now let's get to it. So, now it's the time to introduce the first speaker of tonight, the first artist of tonight, Natan Sinigaglia from Italy. And Natan is appearing on screen. Hi Natan, you're on screen now.
Hello.
With everybody.
Hi.
Natan has explored motion prompting for the last 9 months as part of this AIR program that I mentioned in the beginning, and will share with us how he, being a digital artist but also a dancer, made this world his own, and how it has brought him to the idea to actually build something new to add to it. He didn't do this alone. He worked closely with a data scientist and coder called Kanthavel, whom we'll meet a bit later. But for the sake of listening closely to the story Natan has to tell, he will first give a presentation of himself and the project that he embarked on. So Natan, the floor is yours. Natan, we cannot hear you. Are you muted? The live stream can hear you, right? Okay, you continue. We'll figure it out here. Only we can't hear you, but people online can. Oh, no, they can't. They can't. Nobody hears you. We're trying to fix it.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yes, now we are hearing you.
Okay. Yeah, I hear the echo now. So basically, I'm a sound visual artist and with a strong background in dance and music. And in the last decade, I would say, I spent a lot of time developing mainly installations and live shows, working a lot with music. So doing concerts with musicians, orchestras, where I was capturing the sound in real time from the music, from the instruments.
I'm afraid we lost you again, Natan.
I will try again.
Yes, now we hear you again.
For some reason, I need to disable and enable every time. I don't know. I don't know, what could it be? You let me know when you hear me.
We hear you now.
Okay. So I worked a lot with music and live performances, trying to capture the information out of the music and translating it into something visual and establishing this dialogue. But I always wanted to do the same with the body, with movement, with dance. But I was always frustrated by the fact that I didn't have tools that were giving me enough information, richer information about the body movement. Since long time, we are capable of tracking the body posture and the position of the dancers and the body in the space, but we don't have more than that in terms of information, like just 3D positions of the joints in the space. And I really wanted to see if I could dive deeper in finding information and extract information out of the body. So I was very excited when I got this opportunity to create this project, which is called SYMBODY, into this S+T+ARTS AIR program, residency program. So yeah, I was excited because I saw the opportunity to use AI and machine learning to analyze the body movement and try to understand something more than simply just positions in the space. Trying to understand if I could abstract more fine information, some subtle qualities in the movement, certain features. So it was very exciting. And that was a perfect match with the topic of the residency, which was, can we find other ways to communicate with the machine? Can we use something else instead of our language, our verbal intelligence? Can we use our body intelligence and spatial intelligence to somehow interact with the machines? So yeah, I was very excited to challenge my research in this way. So we started effectively in March, so not long ago, and with the support of InfoArt and collaborating with TNC, which is a software provider company in Milan, in Italy, mainly with Kanthavel, which is one of the speakers. We started developing some AI tools. First of all, we found a very interesting data set available freely online, which was a collection of dances, so dance recordings with 3D motion capture associated to sounds, to music. And that was the perfect bunch of data that we needed to start exploring and developing AI tools. So then we started developing a collection of scripts and software by using machine learning to train a lot of models. So the point was that, okay, what happens during the training? And Rodolfo somehow explained a bit. We want the model to look at this sequence of motions and try to capture what is essential, what is relevant. And so that, exactly how Rodolfo said, I could say the same example. He sees the model look at these emotions and he needs to describe with a very simple phrase what's happening. Now, this kind of compression, this kind of reduction and to something essential. So we started exploring this possibility, and we developed a series of softwares and that were training models, thousands of models with all sorts of settings, because we didn't really know what to expect out of this training. So we wanted to try many different possibilities and combining different training settings to see, what each model was learning out of the training. And the goal was really to come up with a latent space which was very simple, was like, let's say, a point in space, so 3D coordinate. So whatever the model sees by looking at a body moving in space, it needs to somehow come up with an idea about that and represent it in a 3D space with a position. So now I can maybe share my screen where I will show you the software that we developed. So as I said, we wanted to train a lot of models, different models, that were looking at the dance sequences and come up with their own interpretation, or somehow they were interpreting those motions into a very simplified space, like three-dimensional space. And so we created this tool which allow us to train in parallel thousands of different models and then compare them. Okay, let's see this model here with these settings, what kind of interpretation came up about the movement? This is the input source, the sequence of the dance, and this is the interpretation of the model. So this itself was a very interesting tool, because allowed us to, and still allows us to study literally what we are doing, what we are implementing, what kind of variations we are doing to the training, what are the implications, and what are the effects of those changes into this representation that the model then creates. So the goal is to come up with something which is simple enough for us to relate to. Okay. And this is a very interesting aspect. So the input is very complex. The model is doing, the input data is very complex, the motion, but we want to have like a compression that is simple enough that eventually we can relate to somehow. And the idea is to develop, now these are like, it's just a single point in space moving, but then we can ask the model to come up with more informations, more than three. So my goal was to find a way to to create models that can give me higher level information about the motion, not just the joints moving, but what kind of movement it is. It's like a very fluent movement, or it's like a stuttering motion. Is what kind of posture is it? Is tense or relaxed? Is balanced, unbalanced? The goal would be to go in that direction, where the model can abstract higher enough so that they can pick very complex ideas about what they see. And then, so this was the tool to visualize this process. And the idea is then to use these models and somehow, to use them. Give me a sec. To generate some visual feedback. So when the machine look at you, you're moving, the machine is capable of finding, and this is still like a study, it's capable of finding an abstract way to represent what it sees of your movement. So in this way, the hope is to generate a sort of mirror for us to learn more about how we move, and in this way engage also in this exploration. So in this case, I don't know, the color of this particle that get emitted could be associated with certain qualities in the movement, or the way they get emitted could be associated to certain other qualities in the movement. So it becomes an environment where playfully you just explore your movement and you are a feedback of this movement and its qualities. So this was and still is the goal of this residency. We're gonna end this month, at the end of this month, with an exhibition. To me, it really looks almost the beginning of this research, because it's so vast and so complex that it's like scratching the surface of a much broader and deeper universe to explore. But I think it's trying to solve somehow this thing, so enhancing the capability of the machine to reading finer information in our movement could be the way to somehow start relating more naturally and freely with the machines. Also because our body and the movement, our body is the best interface that we know how to control as well. This is the most incredible way in which we relate to the world. So tapping into this domain, I think it's crucial to increase the possibility to communicate with these machines. Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks a lot. You get some applause here from the room. I don't know if you hear it.
Thanks.
That was very, very nice. We'll see you back at the end.
Yep.
So while you were speaking, several people were asking questions on the chat. If you have other questions, you can just put them in the chat. They are being collected by the moderator, and Nathan will come back after the last presentation, and questions can be asked and answered. For now, thanks a lot, Nathan. We're gonna exchange you for Kanthavel for the moment. See you later.
See you later.
So in a second, Nathan is going to be replaced by Kanthavel. And Kanthavel, he also said it was his most prominent technical collaborator on this project. So all the things you saw, what Nathan just showed, was actually partly coded and developed by Kanthavel. And Kanthavel is not an artist, but he's a researcher and a consultant, or he has been a consultant. Now I think he's more of a researcher recently in the world of AI and data. And happy to have you, Kanthavel. Welcome to the digital stage. Good to see you.
Hello.
So to start things off, Kanthavel, what did you do in the project SYMBODY from what we just saw?
Well, I was the technical side of Nathan. I had to put into code and data what his intuition was, and basically open to him a door towards the world of machine learning, and giving him the tools to allowing him to do his experiments and to play with these models. more in detail, we have worked with with small models. As Natan said, we wanted to experiment a lot, to train a lot of different models. And as you mentioned at the beginning, the largest the model is, the more complex it is, the largest the data set is, then the longest time it will take to train, the more expensive it will be, and the more the energy hungry the model will be. And we went to another direction. Some people could call them maybe even toy models from this point of view. And what we mainly focus on are autoencoders. So the basic idea was to design a machine learning model able to transform the input data, which could be music or the dance, the movement, into those points in a 3D space, or sometimes a 6-dimensional space that you've seen just a few minutes ago in Natan's presentation. How to do that? Well, basically, if I want to to keep it as simple as possible, we force the model to filter the data through a narrow space, and then to project it back to the original form. And so we asked the model, okay, you have to give us back the same data that we are giving you in, but you have to pass through a 3D representation of your data. Mostly 3D. We also experimented with different dimensions, but the 3D was the most interesting one, and the one that is easier to relate to.
Well, thanks very much, Kanthavel. That's quite an extensive answer, and I'm happy that you referred back to some of the things I tried to explain in the introduction. So I hope that makes it to understand as well. Another question, Kanthavel, because I know that, of course, you know many more artists, and you've been engaging with artists before, but I think this was the first time to actually build something together with an artist in this project. So trying to translate his view, the view of Natan, to code, how was that for you? And more importantly, what did it bring for you as well to work with an artist like Natan on a project like this?
Yeah, I have been knowing Natan for a very long time, actually. So I was already acquainted with his work on one side. But it's true that it was the first time that I was challenged to use these tools within an artistic framework. I mean, typically you do the operation that we've done, the embedding, so the reduction, the space reduction, is typically done to compress the data or to simplify some data so that the next model would be able to process them more easily or with less computational effort. While Natan was asking me to basically give him a representation which is typically used by a machine, so the low dimension representation, the embedding of this data. And he wanted to be able to read this representation as a human. So he wanted something that would make sense to a human eye, and that could still have an echo of the original input of the music or the dance that we use as a source. And that, I mean, this gave me very different constraints from the one that you typically have in an engineering set or framework. I mean, I didn't have a specific metric to reach or a specific target accuracy to reach within, I don't know, a translation problem or a data extraction problem. I had somebody telling me that the point was not rotating right, or that it was too squashed, and he couldn't read anything out of it. So I had to use these tools and to bend them a bit to give something that was also interesting from an artistic point of view and maybe an aesthetic point of view also. And that was really, I mean, from my perspective as a I don't know, machine learning practitioner or data scientist was quite interesting, and yeah, it really gave me a different take and a different perspective, even on how to explain those technologies to people. I mean, I can see an easy jump from what Natan has done so far to something that you show to pupils in a school, for instance, as a first steps towards an approach towards these technologies.
Yes, most definitely. So I have one more question for you, Kanthavel, and it can be potentially a very big question, but you can try to answer it quite narrowly. You are a machine learning practitioner. You are a data scientist. I know you're going to conferences. You just embarked on a new career path that takes you more into researching models, AI models itself. So in your words, what do you think is awaiting us when it comes to AI in coming months and years? Can you raise the tip of the...
That's a tricky question, and please keep me on track if I lose it. So, I mean, I still feel the deeper I go into this universe, the more I feel like I know just a little bit of it, and I can get a gist of what's happening in some research fields or some large models or whatever, but it always feels a bit like it still feels a bit like black magic sometimes, even for somebody that uses them daily, which is also part of the reasons I'm still doing this job, I guess. Well, as for the future, well, I really cannot answer to this, but let me see. Well, I think, okay, I will do it. I will go this way. I think there are some very important and basic tools that we all need to have in order to get in touch happily and properly and with consciousness to these technologies. I think it's important that we lose a bit of this black magic feeling that we have in front of these tools, and maybe we try to understand something more about the probabilities and how these models work from a probabilistic point of view. Maybe some more about how these things are coded, how the data is collected, and so on. Yeah, I think
that's good for now, Kanthavel.
Okay, sorry.
I don't want to push you into saying things you will regret.
I hope so. I hope not. But the artistic approach to this field, I think, as I said before, is something that really opens up the field to other interpretations, other ways to use it, to teach it, and to understand it.
Let's keep it with that. Thank you very much, Kanthavel.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I hope you'll stay with us. So we'll see you in the end as well, right? In the discussion.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That's also for the audience online. If you have any questions to direct to Kanthavel, you can use the chat now and we'll collect them. Or maybe you feel an urge to answer this question yourself, and you can also enlighten other people in the chat. For now, we are going to do something completely different. Lilian?
Yeah, we are talking about body movements, but we sat on a stool or in front of our computer for a while now. So we thought it's time for a little break, a little stretch. We also have a website for you. We will share it in the chat. We will put it here online on a laptop, where you can also see how your body movements are tracked by motion tracking computers. The talk after the break is about how to hack those tools. So maybe you can already try to hack the tools and make body movements that cannot be recognized by the motion tracking software. But also have a drink. There's a little bar open in this space, but at home you probably also have nice drinks in the fridge. We'll see you back in just 5 minutes, let's say 8 o'clock in here, Netherlands time.
5 minutes, so a quick drink.
Yeah, a quick break.
Okay.
So see you back in a bit.
All right, welcome back, everybody, here and online. I hope you had the chance to get something to drink and to be prepared for our next course in this meal of motion prompting. This is going to be a talk by Uncharted Limbo Collective, or ULC for friends. And ULC is quite a remarkable group, consisting of 4 artists. They also call themselves creative coders, and I have come to know them as technology philosophers as well, and you will find out why that is. Taking a completely different approach to the same field as Natan and Kanthavel did, they will take you through a story of love and hate between human and machine. George from ULC, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Is everything okay? One, two, 1, 2.
We can hear you, George. Go.
Okay, awesome. I'm George Adamopoulos, and thank you very much for this amazing evening. And so far, it's been such a great collection of people and ideas. I'm here to present our technical and creative and philosophical journey dealing with motion capture and arguing with it about what humans look like. But first, just a little bit of an introduction. We are Uncharted Limbo Collective, and we have my co-founder, Chris, here with us. We are 4 weird people that we all studied architecture at some point and then worked as computational designers, software developers in big firms, VFX specialists, just a mixed set of skills, a mixed set of trajectories. And it's fair to say that in the day we design and in the night we code. We've been working a lot with motion capture, with dancers and choreographers, producing some pieces that challenge the idea of what a body is, what movement is, what the past and the future trajectory of a body in motion is. And this is one of our first projects, Chaotic Body 1, and followed by Chaotic Body 2, essentially treating human bodies not just as what they are, but also what in terms of the effects they create in the space around them, in their impact. And a few years ago, we collaborated with Alexander Wheatley in this 1-hour-long, completely live show where 3 dancers had motion capture sensors on them. We were tracking their data in real time, producing visuals in real time and projecting them back, creating an intermediate space between the digital self of the dancers themselves, and the overlap between the digital and the physical. And about that time, when that show was being developed, generative AI was becoming very hot, and as we were dealing with the human body and software and visual effects and the combination of all these, and we started seeing attempts to make machines become creative. We put a question to ourselves: can we actually show society a version of AI, an idea of AI that is more than a servant behind a paywall? Is it all that children will learn that AI is interacting with a bot? We thought we could do better, and we thought we deserved better. So we started thinking about a project called Monolith, inspired by this Monolith in Space Odyssey, which is a dance performance placing a really big bet. Can machines actually co-perform? Can an AI system express curiosity, empathy, seduction, deception, panic, and other emotions towards a human co-performer live on stage? And we were lucky enough but we got accepted by the S+T+ARTS AIR program, and we got to develop it and make the first steps in this very ambitious, very challenging topic. We like to make our own tools. We like to really understand technology, and we see each project as a journey. A journey equally interesting to the end result, if not more interesting than the end result. So we had to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is a human? What is a human to a machine? To train a machine on humans, we first need to decide what humans look like. And we had to take a look at what people have been doing. And we discovered this fascinating, confusing world of human body models, representations of what a human is to a machine. How can we represent the human body? There are skeleton-based models, contour-based models, and volume-based models in a nutshell, in very broad terms. And that seems simple, but actually you start dealing with lots of abstractions, and the idea of a human body can differ a lot depending on the context, depending on what you want to do with that representation, with that abstraction. And depending on the data set you're working with, you even have different skeletal representations. So it's a sea of incompatible or semi-compatible views about what the human is to a machine. And then going deeper, you see that depending on the context, whether you want to perform a yoga poses, whether you want to detect body parts in an image, whether you want to take a selfie and isolate yourself from the background, or open an Instagram filter and put a mustache on your face, the idea of what a human is to a machine can vary radically. And some of these models are not even compatible to each other. They're representations that are very specific to the use context. And going even deeper to trying to find the state of the art, like what's the most we can do with the current representations, we ended up with what we could maybe consider the ultimate, the most universal description of the human body, which is based on thousands and thousands of 4D scans, volumetric and time sequenced scans of lots of body types, lots of ages, lots of poses, and an analysis of the shape of the body, the breathing, the soft body dynamics, which is called the SMPL, or simple model, which we think that philosophically it's interesting because we remember the universal man of Leonardo da Vinci and the attempt to find the ideal body, or the attempts in the modernist movement to find the average person. And here we are scanning literally thousands of people and trying to find one model that with the right set of parameters can describe simply everybody. And then to actually get a machine to training a machine on whatever representation we choose, we actually need millions of people. So where do we find them? And again, it's a fascinating space of very weird, lonely situations where people just try to do stuff in front of high-end cameras, or really schizophrenic data sets with fully synthetic 3D people all together in a space, doing whatever, doing extremely random things, which are very precious for neural networks, but at the same time, it's a food for thought about how good can a model be if it's trained on fake humans in fake situations. But I think that's something for the questions. We also ran into the S++ dataset that Natan and Kanthavel talked about, this will all make sense in a minute when I talk about our performance. We realized that no matter how you approach the problem of tracking humans and training an AI on humans, you end up in the trap or in the inevitable position of having to categorize. And there's always the question, what if what I need is not in these categories? And as you can see, even a data set that is of this size still has to choose the categories that it has to place on the data points. And we, again, ended up at the state of the art where literally you track everything a person sees from their point of view, their egocentric point of view, what they hear, how their eyes move, and how they move in the space from an exocentric point of view. Trained on people not just in one continent, but around the world doing the same things, both as experts and as beginners, both in sport, in procedural activities and simple playful activities, etc. So this journey about how people train machines to understand people led us to believe that most models, if not all, are trained on normal people doing normal things. And what about strange people doing stranger things, which was the main point of interest for our performance? What does the AI see when it's presented with a new situation that it was actually never trained on? Will it succeed? Will it fail? Will it do both? In papers, scientists would say this is a limitation of our model. For us, as an art practice, this is an opportunity. An opportunity to create a real dialogue between a human and a machine, meaning that in a real dialogue, there is always the risk of mutual confusion and misunderstanding. There's always a risk that things might go wrong and we might actually end up in a worse place than we began. And that very risk is what makes a human situation, meeting someone on the street or arguing with someone or giving a presentation right here, have real stakes, feel real, as opposed to a completely scripted dialogue as actors do in the theater. And in the context of the residency, we met with some top-notch international grade dancers, and we gave them a simple brief. Imagine you have a monolith in front of you. It's a huge screen. It can see you, and it can communicate with you via sound and visuals. We didn't show them any visuals or any sound. They had to imagine it. And we told them, improvise your encounter. You don't know anything about this being. It might be afraid of you, or it might be hostile. It might try to deceive you, or you might be able to seduce it. It might be easy to walk away, or that machine might pull you with a strength you cannot escape. And we let them loose. And we did hours of dance sessions, followed by hours of discussions about what the dancers just did. And I have a small clip just to see what kind of strange people and what kind of strange things they're doing once you give them this brief that is completely alien and removed from our daily life. So I had to cut this in a shorter version because of the time limit. But essentially, our dancers were going through emotions. They were curious. They were trying to ignore the machine. They were trying to be happy while they were in pain. They were suffering in front of the machine. So they went through a whole range of emotions, and we were recording every second, every frame, in order to feed our model. And at some point, as we were discussing the things that were happening, we realized something important, that if we give the dancers a little bit of knowledge of what the machine can and cannot do, and ask them something completely contradictory, we end up with something that feels like an artistic act. And for us, the artistic act exists in the moment of tension between expectation and reality, between what you think is going to happen completely contradicts the event that just happened in front of you. And I want to give you an example before I actually show you what happened in our case. This is a prompt. Vintage photo, girl smoking cigarette, Irina, Nordsol, Kuzmina, a hazy memory, aspect ratio 2:3. The image on the left is Midjourney version 1, and the image on the right is Midjourney version 6 or 5.2, I'm not sure. In the one hand, we have an AI model that makes mistakes to us. From its point of view, it's doing what it's meant to do. But for us, there is a tension between our expectation of a girl smoking cigarette and the reality of what we're seeing. And for us, this is art. This is the artistic act, the artistic moment. On the right, your expectations with the reality are pretty much are the same. And for us, at least, the one on the right has less artistic value, has less to teach us about the whole process, about the whole context that it was created. So if you like the left one, you probably are going to like our art. If you like the right one, you're probably going to find our art a bit too weird. So we gave the improvisation brief to Will, saying the machine always sees you. Look at you. You're surrounded by cameras. You cannot escape the machine. Now hide from the machine. Just hide. And we told Will that the machine is trained on humans, on normal humans doing normal things. Just that. We didn't give him a lecture, just gave him this simple bit of information. And here's what Will did, trying to hide from the machine. And I hope the compression is kind to us. You see that Will tries to lose his humanity. In his attempt to hide from a machine that's trained to see humans, he tries to be non-human. He tries to eradicate every part of him that can be considered human. He deforms his shape, he hides his face, his locomotion, his way of moving around, his weight around the space changes completely. And we can see that the detection model detects him as a thing. We see the box, but the key point, the skeleton model, gets really as a collection of points at best, or nothing at worst. And Will had no idea, as he was doing it, that the machine is seeing him like that. It would be an interesting experiment to actually show him in real time the model as in the form of a mirror, and see how he reacts when he sees himself become disfigured, dismembered. Now, we fed you earlier to that perfect model that no matter what you give to it, it will find the human for you. Makes my hair stand. So earlier, translated into that universal human. It starts okay, but then the worse the model becomes, its attempt about what Will is doing becomes more and more creepy, more and more far from reality. And here we have that tension between our expectation and reality. Here's we have what we like to call the artistic act in the context of a machine trying to understand the human, of course. So we end up with an understanding that a dialogue between a machine and the human does not need to be perfect, just like a dialogue between us does not need to be perfect. Just like you understood probably a percentage of what I said, not because of anyone's fault, but because our means of communications are imperfect. So we have a degree of agreement between what the machine sees and what the human does. And for us, this is a fertile ground for continuing in our project, talking about a dialogue that is never fully perfect, but also never fully imperfect. It's always somewhere in between. And this is just a collection of the humans that were generated just from 10 minutes of interaction with Will, split in multiple clips. So to close this, I have to admit that when we started the project, we had a very different definition of humanness, and we were thinking about the skeleton models, about media pipe, about the common ways of understanding humans. But new concepts about bodies in motion emerged after our sessions with the dancers, after discussing these ideas about seeing myself in a digital mirror, seeing myself become less human, trying to lose my humanity, trying to find my humanity, trying to be as human as possible, and so on and so forth. And what's next? We think that a skeleton model or a 3D mesh is fine. It's interesting enough to produce a dialogue, but what if we capture things that are more abstract? What if we capture the impact of the body? Imagine that you don't see that human in the middle. You just see the energy. You just see this 3D fluid simulated energy of this body. A machine can be trained on this and can train to understand, is that energy coming towards me? Is that person trying to hit me? Is that energy random? Is that person kind of crazy, going all over the place? Is that energy low on the ground? Is it guys? We started realizing that most models, although that's starting to change with models trained on yoga poses, most models deal with people standing upright, even when they're dancing or they're break dancing. They're still relatively head up, feet down, more or less. But what if we capture weird relationships of the body with the floor, as our dancers did? Or what if we actually capture the effort of the dancer using their breath and their non-verbal sounds, the way they sound as their muscles are in tension, which is very different if they're pretending to move versus if they're really moving. And something that is interesting because we converged with Natan, trying to understand the human body and visualize it. We ended up with the same desire to visualize the latent space. We ended up with the concept of a latent spaceship, essentially a navigation tool that allows you to...
It's a bit time to wrap up your presentation.
Yep.
Is there something urgent you want to share, or is it something that you can also leave for the discussion?
I just finished.
Great.
I just wanted to end with this representation of our latent space, where each point is a small 1-second clip, and they all relate to each other in space, clustering depending on how similar the movements are to each other. Thank you very much. I tend to speak a lot, so thanks for bearing with me.
Thank you very much. You get a physical applause here, and I guess also a digital applause. You can do it with the emotes below and in the live stream. Yeah, we have one speaker coming up. We are a bit not on schedule. It takes a bit longer time, but it's also interesting. So, and we also want to still discuss some things. There are, of course, some questions asked in the chat that are already answered in the chat as well. But if you have a question also for George, based on the presentation that he just gave, feel free to leave it in the chat. We have one more presentation coming up before we go to the discussion, which also elaborates a bit more on the bias that George was just tipping on. Emma Harvey is a PhD student in information science at Cornell University in New York, and she studies methods for assessing and improving the fairness of social technologies. Please have a warm welcome for Emma. Yeah, you can start. Oh, you are still muted. Can you unmute yourself, Emma?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Let me know if you cannot hear me correctly, and I will change something. But I think this should be good. Okay, perfect. So my name's Emma. I am a PhD student, and I think I'm here to complicate things a little bit by talking about the simplifying and normative assumptions that motion capture systems make about the human body. This was actually a great lead-in by George talking about models trained on normal bodies doing normal things. What is a normal body is a question that we ask in our work. Who are we? Well, my talk is based on ongoing research conducted by myself along with Mona Sloan, Abigail Jacobs, Emmanuel Moss, and Hauke Sandhaus. And to kind of lead into our work, I want to start by talking quickly about a different but related technology to motion capture, and that is the camera. And in this part of my talk, I'm very much drawing on work by the researchers Sarah Lewis and Lerna Roth, which I'll try to briefly summarize here. So in the early days of color photography, you would send your film to a lab to be developed, and the lab technicians would calibrate the colors using what was called a Shirley card. You can see an example of that on the slide. It features a white woman. The original Shirley was a Kodak employee named Shirley. That's how it's got its name. And the goal is that when the photos are developed, Shirley's face looks good. That's how technicians know that they've developed the photos correctly. So this means that color photography was initially designed to capture white faces, and the faces of Black and brown people did not look good in those early color photos. And in fact, Kodak did eventually take steps to address this, although it was in response to complaints from chocolate and furniture companies who said that their brown products weren't photographing well. The bias and the assumption about whose bodies and whose faces should be the subjects of photographs has propagated into modern digital technologies. So, for example, the artist and researcher Dr. Joy Buolamwini has done a lot of work exposing how facial recognition technologies don't recognize the faces of Black people, especially Black women. And this is kind of, you can link this to a continuation of the original biases in photography. And it turns out that motion capture is pretty similar. So motion capture infers the position and motion of objects in space from sensors, but also from assumptions about what a body's underlying skeleton looks like. And to understand what those assumptions are, my team has been conducting a research project for the past 18-ish months around the history of motion capture and what its history means for modern day technology. So we decided to explore the history through a systematic lit review. I won't go into huge detail here, but basically we searched through literature that was published on measuring errors in existing motion capture systems and evaluating and validating new systems. and ended up uncovering 278 papers, which we read and then analyzed through the lens of social practice theory, which again, I won't go into super detail here, but in the simplest terms, it examines how practices like validating systems or measuring errors in systems stabilize over time as the assumptions that they rest on solidify, and then how they might break apart as the meanings, materials, and competences that they rely on change. So broadly, what we found were 3 distinct eras in the history of motion capture technology. And we define each era according to the forms of error measurement that it focused on as social practices. I'm very sorry that those words sound so similar to one another. But prior to the 1980s, we identified the foundation era of motion capture. This was an era in which researchers, especially government and military researchers, were trying to develop standardized ways of measuring aspects of the human body. These measurements, as I will get into shortly, form the foundation for a lot of aspects of modern motion capture systems that we still use today. From the 1980s until the 2000s, we had the standardization era, in which commercial motion capture systems were introduced, and in which researchers focused on errors related to instruments or sensors themselves, where markers that sensors sense are placed on a body, and also soft tissue artifacts, which has a lot of interesting implications because these are related to when the surface of a body moves independently of its skeleton, for example, due to clothing, loose skin, fat, things like that. We're currently in what we call the innovation era, in which researchers are exploring ways of developing cheaper and less obtrusive motion capture systems, often enabled by deep learning. So what's really important here is how the eras build on each other. Research done in the foundation era defines how we define bodies today. Research done in the standardization era defines how we validate new systems today. And this has a lot of implications for modern motion capture. One thing I want to dig into here is estimating body segment parameters. So this is something that we focused a lot on, or researchers focused a lot on in the foundation era. Body segment parameters are things like the mass and center of gravity of a part of your body, like your forearm or of your calf. These are important quantities to know for motion capture because they form the basis for a lot of medical inference we can do with motion capture. So if you have sensors that tell you the position and motion of a body, and a little bit of information about like how much force you're putting down when you step or things like that. And then if you have body segment parameters, you can actually estimate things like the force that is being exerted on the body's joints as the body moves. And this is important for medical diagnosis or for workplace safety surveillance. For example, you could have a camera in your warehouse that notifies you if workers are lifting things in ways that are likely to cause injury to them. However, body segment parameters aren't directly observable without really invasive procedures up to and including dismemberment. So this kind of early research here by Wilfred Taylor Dempster, who's doing research for the US Air Force, basically he took cadavers and dismembered them and directly calculated things like the mass or center of gravity of the body segments as he was kind of iteratively dismembering them. And he created formulas to estimate what those parameters would be from anthropometric measurements, which are things like the length or circumference of a body segment that you could take on a living person. The thing about these cadavers is it was 8 cadavers, and they were all old, thin, white men. So the formulas that are actually still used in gold standard systems today are based on this very small set of experiments on a very specific body type. And the data and assumptions that gold standard systems rely on are super important because another thing that our analysis revealed is that novel motion capture systems are overwhelmingly evaluated based on the extent to which they agree with existing gold standards. This is a process called concurrent validity assessment, and these images are just taken from an arbitrarily selected paper out of the 278 that we reviewed. And in this case, you can see that the authors are evaluating the performance of a novel system by concurrently measuring a person's motion with their new system, and then also what they consider to be a gold standard system, and they compare the measurements. So this is really typical What is not typical, though, are subgroup validity assessments, where you would measure whether a system performs equally well for individuals with different physical or demographic characteristics. And so this can really matter, the fact that systems are implicitly designed for thin, white male bodies. Similar assumptions in body measurement have led to big historical harms. So, for example, female drivers and passengers are at higher risk for injury in car crashes as compared to male drivers in comparable crashes. And this can be attributed to the fact that crash test dummies are designed to consider the average male body and don't take female bodies into account. The same kinds of harms can be present from motion capture technology, as long as motion capture technology is making the same assumptions about what the average body looks like. The last time I gave this talk, I got a question that I thought was really good, which I'll close with, which was, I see why what you're pointing out is important for medical or safety use cases of motion capture, but how does this matter when we're talking about things like art or entertainment and not diagnosing people or flagging risk in those use cases? And there's a few things to think about here, but one thing in particular I want to emphasize is that like safety or medical use cases and artistic use cases of motion capture don't really separate from one another. So the Kinect, for example, was initially introduced as a form of a video game controller by Microsoft, but because it is a cheap depth sensor, researchers very quickly began using it for motion capture. And in fact, a lot of the papers that we reviewed were about using the Kinect as a way to do motion capture in people's homes for really important tasks like fall detection or injury rehabilitation. So one opportunity that you have when you're using motion capture for art or entertainment is to understand exactly how these systems are and aren't capturing your body, and use that as an opportunity to maybe start challenging some of the simplifying or normative assumptions on which these systems are based. That's it for me. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And if you'd like to read more about our work, you can check out our paper, The Cadaver in the Machine. Thank you so much.